afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are all welcome to this session about schools reopening, in person or virtual. You know, what are the options we have? What are the implications to our families? What do we need to know? And what do we need to do to be ready? My name is Bola Odetokon. I'm the founder and CEO of Parenting Resources and Initiatives. It's my pleasure this afternoon to welcome everyone. And well, just a few things about me. I'm a certified database administrator and an IT auditor. I've worked with a few consulting firms in IT. I currently work in the automotive industry. A graduate of the Obafemi Awolowo University, the Federal University of Technology, Akure, and Walden University. PRI is a faith-based organization. We provide support and resources for families. We encourage families and come alongside them to raise well-balanced children that will grow up to be, you know, leaders in the future, you know, and even leaders now in their various endeavors. We conduct workshops and seminars and conferences, and we also collaborate with other like-minded organizations to support families in the communities generally. We believe that when the family unit is strong, our communities will be strong, and hence our entire nation. This afternoon, we have a distinguished panel here to discuss these issues with us, and I'm going to start introducing them, not in any particular order. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Adere Bibe. He's the Chief of Pediatrics and Medical Director of the NICU unit at both Newman Hospital in Newman and the Turner Medical Center, Carrollton, Georgia. He's been a health care advocate for over 30 years. He studied at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Nigeria, and at other well-established institutions as well. He had his pediatric residency at both Luth in Nigeria and at the Nassau County Medical Center. He had his neonatology, I hope I'm saying that right, fellowship at Duke University.
Yes.
He's both certified, thank you. He's both certified in general pediatrics and neonatal medicine. He's the steering committee member of the Neonatal Association of Greater Atlanta and also a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He's been recognized twice as a prominent physician and pillar of the community for 2 consecutive years. Please welcome Dr. Adere Bibe.
Thank you.
Next, you're welcome, sir. I'm going to introduce Dr. Lisa Fuller. She's a practicing psychiatrist in Michigan, in the Michigan area with over 28 years experience. She specializes in working with all ages and stages of life. She holds a Bachelor's of Science, an Associate of Arts in Christian Leadership, and also a Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine degree. She's the president of the Sun Life Health Incorporated. She's also faculty at Detroit Wayne County Mental Health Authority, where she serves as psychoanalytical supervisor for psychiatric residents. She provides leadership, crisis, and trauma training across the globe. Please welcome Dr. Lisa Fuller. Next, I'm going to introduce Ms. Bethany Horn. She's a school counselor at Parkview High School in Gwinnett County Public School District. She graduated from Georgia State University with a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology. And she's worked in the mental health field at the Devereux, Georgia Treatment Network in Kennesaw. She obtained a Master's of Education in School Counseling. And she did this to, in order to be able to work with adolescents and also serve children in a preventative manner. Not many people will leave, the private sector to go back to the public sector, but that tells you where her passion is. She's a nationally board certified counselor, and she's also certified in applied suicide intervention skills training. She's a member of the American School Counselor Association as well as the Georgia School Counselor Association. She's also a firm believer in the importance of mental wellness for student success. She works with students from a holistic perspective. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Bethany Horn. Next is Professor Akinyemi. Professor Akinyemi is a political science and international affairs professor. She's the director of the Center for African and African Diaspora Studies at Kennesaw State University. He holds a Bachelor's of Political Science from State University of New York, a Master of Political Science from Southern University, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a PhD in International Studies from the University of South Carolina. He's a faculty advisor for the African Students Association and the Model African Union Chief. He teaches courses on international relations of Africa, comparative political systems, development policy and politics, and American government. He also designs and implements a variety of campus and community outreach programs every year as part of his work at the center. Please welcome Professor Akeyemi. And this afternoon, this discussion is going to be moderated by Ms. Bola Adeshini. She's the managing consultant and the CEO of Sigus Consulting Group. She's also an alumnus of the David Sacher Community Health Leadership Program. She's an added proponent of the community service and quality healthcare accessibility for all. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Chemistry and Biology, a Master of Science degree in Microbiology, and a Master of Business Administration. She's a co-author of publications in scientific and healthcare journals. She's also a certified project management professional as well as a certified Scrum Master. So please welcome Ms. Bola Adeshini. And just before I hand over to her, just some ground rules. If you are not the one on the floor, that means you are not the active speaker. Please mute your phone, and so that we can all have a free flow conversation without any distractions or disruptions. We're going to have a section where we would take questions from the participants. So if you have any question, please feel free to post them in the chat and we'll pick them as we go on. Again, you're all welcome to this discussion. We hope we all get to learn something that would help us, especially for those of us who are parents or those of us who are teachers, something that will help us as we all decide whether we want to allow our children to go back to school in person or we want to choose the online option, and whatever that means for us as a family. Once again, you're all welcome. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Adeshini.
Thank you very much. Let me also say welcome for our program today, which is Reopening Schools, in person versus virtual, what we all need to know. If the host, co-host will please give me the ability to share my screen. Thank you. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Very well. All right, so I want to start with where we are today relative to COVID-19, the disease. So these are the facts as they stand today. And this data is from the CDC website. For the United States, this is the breakdown relative to ages, this in terms of COVID-19 deaths. The percentages of death, they gave it the numbers, and I actually went ahead and calculated the percentage relative to age. And you'll see that the numbers, the percentage begins to increase when you get to 45 to the 54 years of age. It's 5.1% of the total deaths. And from ages 55 to 64, it becomes 12%. 20% of the deaths are age 65 to 74, and then it increases in terms of the percentage of death. And this data is as of the 25th of July. This is the date, the data from February this year till July 25. And this is the data for Georgia. And again, it seems to be a similar trend. From ages 45 to 54, the percentage total of death is 6%. And then from 55 to 64, it's 13%. And then it increases from there. So we see a significant jump from ages 45 and above. And this is data from the Georgia Department of Health. And this is what was reported as of the 31st of July. So in Georgia, we have 186,000 confirmed cases over that, over 186,000 confirmed cases, and over 3,752 deaths, and hospitalizations are over 18,000, and we have ICU admissions that are over 3,000. So I thought we should begin with the facts. Now, the Texas Medical Association did a study, and I'm going to zoom this because I know it's a lot of information that they have placed in on one slide. I'll move it so you can see. So let's begin with the facts, if you will. All right, so what they did was the physicians ranked the rate of risk of different activities. And we're talking about schools today. Can you see it? Is it big enough? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're talking about schools today. And if you look at this right here, let me find schools. Sending kids to school, camp, or daycare. And on a scale of 1 to 10, they have ranked that 6. The risk that they've assigned to that is 6. So I wanted us to start with the facts before we begin our discussion today. So we know there are a lot of contradictions. We had a lot of things in the press today regarding the coronavirus, the disease COVID-19. So consequently, parents don't know what to do. People don't know what to believe. What should they do relative to kids going to school? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Should children go to school? Should they do in person? Is it safer to do virtual education? So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Aderibigbe.
Okay.
What risk does coronavirus pose to children and young adults?
Yes, thank you. As you had mentioned, the risks of severe disease in children, thankfully, is not as pronounced as that in adults. That's a good thing. Having said that, we know that kids could still come down very sick with what's termed a multiple system inflammatory condition from COVID. Not very common, but it does happen every once in a while. Just as in adults, you also have kids who have comorbid conditions, kids who are diabetic, kids who are being treated for cancer, kids who have other medical conditions going on. They are more at risk for coming down with severe disease. So it's still something to be extremely cautious about. We're thankful that kids have more or less been spared terrible consequences of COVID vaccine. The big talk you hear about now is that, can they still transmit infection even if they don't come down sick? And that's still an ongoing discussion. We think that's possible. But as you've seen, you get new information almost on a daily basis with this condition. So the jury is still out on that one.
Okay. Ms. Horn, in July it was reported that parents, teachers, and students from Gwinnett County protested and demanded that Gwinnett County School District allow in-person classes. And in Cobb County, WSB-TV also reported that Cobb County parents group, and I believe they were called Reopen Our Classrooms Safely. They were joined by Cobb County Association of Educators to protest the lack of information regarding working conditions for employees. And last week, it was reported actually that 3 Gwinnett County employees have actually tested positive for COVID-19. In light of all this information that we have and what we currently know about COVID-19, do you feel it's safe to hold in-person classes, or would you recommend virtual instructions? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll start by saying my thoughts are going to be, separate from Gwinnett County's and Parkview High School's thoughts. These are just my personal feelings, and it does not reflect what they think. And I know there were protests, and it was really difficult, because we have so much data out there. It's really hard, for parents and students and teachers to know what is the best course of action. Personally, I feel like that the online learning may be best until we feel like we have more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? More of a hardline treatment that helps with COVID. I think that's going to help a lot of older adults feel better because as we know, people can be asymptomatic and carry it and not know it. And so I think that has been, some of the concerns of the adults in the building is, even though what we're seeing is that it's not affecting younger people as hard or as harshly, they could be carrying it and transfer that to adults. So I think my personal feelings would be that the online learning for now, and then we continue to, every 9 weeks, which is what Gwinnett County has said would be best to do, is look at where we're at, look what CDC is saying, look what our health experts are saying, and our local public health department, and use their guidelines to reopen.
Professor Akinyemi, what are your thoughts relative to university students? Would you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
All right, sorry. There is no consistency in terms of what we're getting from the federal and state level. And here in Georgia, we have different school systems with different policies. In Cobb County, where I live, I was on their website yesterday, and I was glad to see that they're doing all online for this school year, at least for this semester. I don't know if it's going to go through in the spring. And they have a lot of resources on there for parents and teachers and students to use. I also, because we're in an election year, the whole thing has been politicized. So what do? As a parent, I would say you have to make that decision. As long as we still have these rising levels of infection and we don't have a cure, we don't have a vaccine, first option will be keep your kids at home and do online. Now, you may not have that choice depending on which school system you are in. But my first preference will be to do online for now until we really know what's going on. As Dr. Aderibigbe just mentioned, we have new information coming out every day. Just a couple of days ago, Dr. Fauci was saying on CNN that although kids are less likely to be seriously ill from this virus, but they also carry 10 times virus load in their noses, 10 times more than adults. So that means the possibility of coming home and infecting their elderly parents or infecting their teachers and staff is pretty high. So we're in a situation right now where you really will have to make the best decision for yourself. And from my standpoint will be keep the kids out of school right now and do online.
There's certainly so much uncertainty that we have to deal with, so things have to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
But Dr. Fuller, as a psychiatrist, from the mental health perspective, what are your thoughts? What are you seeing?
Hello. It's really interesting. The dynamics are really interesting. When I found out about the this platform, the first thing I did was I asked different people of different socioeconomic status, people Wisconsin, California, Michigan, and the reason why is because I wanted to get a feel of what people felt and what we're dealing with. I've read the literature, I've seen the statistics with respect to the lower percentage of children affected, but of course we know about the comorbidities. I've seen those things. I think that the population who wants to read and accept these issues, it's there. But I think also that we're dealing with two other issues. One is socialization, and what are the children doing at home? Or is there structure at home? Is there food? Is there an incidence of child abuse? Now let me flip. As a mother and as a soon-to-be grandmother, subjectively, it would be very hard for me to send my children to school. And the reason why is because I know the facts, I know the statistics. People who I talk to, as I said, they know the facts, they know the statistics. One person actually was an employee who works as a project manager with respect to a pharmaceutical company. And the answers were basically the same, with the exception of one person who is a physician. I would send my kid to school, is what that particular person said. But everyone else, which was interesting, said I'd keep them at home. So we're looking at anxiety. And what about the anxiety and the dynamics of the children? Am I going to get this? Am I going to transmit it? Is my family members going to get it? So I believe there are a lot of different dynamics and issues that we have here.
There is a lot to think about, a lot to be concerned about. But in terms of the concern about, am I going to transmit it? Am I going to get it? Dr. Aderibigbe, some people have advocated herd immunity as the way to go. Would you please explain to everyone what that is and what your position is relative to that proposition?
Yes, so herd immunity is when you have a medical condition, usually an infection, that affects a critical mass, a proportion of the population, enough that it becomes beneficial. One example I'll use is something like polio, where when you're immune to polio, especially by the vaccine, you shed in the GI tract, you shed polio, and it could actually be beneficial even to the non-immune non-immune members of the community. But you need a critical mass for that to happen. And I think it's been talked about, Dr. Fauci had addressed that, saying right now, even though a lot of people have been affected, you still need a whole lot more. That's where I think the vaccine comes in. Hopefully we'll get that, we'll get the vaccine shortly. And I hope people won't be too scared to get that, because the more people who end up being immune, it ends up being beneficial for the greater good of the community. So that's what herd immunity means. What was the second part of the question?
And what's your position on that? Now, relative to herd immunity, also some countries in Europe actually, propose, those go out there and be exposed to it, and then you become immune in that manner. And some people in this country have also proposed that. Don't worry, everyone get out, whether you have it or not, be exposed to it, and then that way you build immunity. So don't worry about catching it. So that way we build immunity as a nation. What are your thoughts about that approach as opposed to vaccine?
Yeah, one has to be very careful about that. We do know that the fatality or mortality risks are age determined, like you had, presented on your slides. But you still have young people coming down with serious infections. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we're still not sure about the long-term consequences. Even if you don't fall seriously ill in the beginning, a lot of people are saying, there's actually no system that's exempt long-term. Strokes, memory, respiratory things. So exposing yourself would not be a good idea. The introduction of the vaccine is a more controlled way of getting, more people immune. And you've heard about that, and I'm sure some people may even be taking matters in their hands and doing that. I would be extremely careful about exposing yourself in that manner.
At least preliminarily, it doesn't seem to have worked for the European countries that did that relative to their counterparts who seem to have taken other precautionary approaches. Ms. Horn, relative to getting schools ready, we're talking about elementary school, middle school, high school. What is it going to take to really get schools ready to get children back to school safely? What are the things that need to be put in place in order to get them back to school safely as currently advocated for in-person?
For in-person, I would say there has to be a set sanitation process in place. Having clear guidelines for kids. The hardest part about all of this, and I think may have driven part of the online to be, the choice here for in Gwinnett County. I'm not sure, but I am going to speculate based on a lot of teachers and what they've said is they were worried about elementary school students. You know, they're kids, they play with their masks, they don't want to keep them on for long periods of time, they end up on their head, you know, using them as slingshots, all sorts of stuff, because they're just kids. And so I think, you know, they were really worried at that level, and even in middle school, if you know, we're thinking of the maturity of the students, that it was going to be hard to enforce a lot of the necessary guidelines to keep students safe, and also protect the staff as well. And so I think coming back, you know, I agree that there needs to be a vaccine, there needs to be some sort of treatment in place so that when people do get sick, you know, we can, you know, make sure that they're getting their treatment, and the risk for them to, you know, die from this disease is a lot lower. Just kind of piggybacking on your question about the herd immunity, I think when we have a set treatment in place, I think that is when it'll be safer. But as far as schools go, there just has to be clear guidelines. You know, and we threw out a lot of different ideas. There was talk of, you know, going to swipe systems for kids entering their lunch numbers so they don't have to touch the pen pad. So having different technologies in place and putting those into all of the schools, I think logistics is a hard thing right now. You know, just in these 5-6 months, you know, we're not as prepared. You know, a lot of schools around the nation just weren't as prepared to have to streamline all of these different technologies to make this possible. You know, and so, like I said, the sanitation process, having those technologies in place, the social distancing guidelines, you know, logistically, classrooms just aren't set up with the capability to be able to socially distance 30, 35 students in a classroom. And when you talk about Gwinnett County, when we have as many students as we do, we're one of the largest counties. We have, you know, some of the largest high schools in Georgia. It's really hard to implement those guidelines. Not saying it's not possible, but the classroom space can be an issue. I know at Parkview, we just built a whole new wing to be able to accommodate the amount of students that we have coming. We have over 3,200 students enrolled right now. And so it's really, like I said, just logistically, it's hard to accommodate all those guidelines. So thinking about coming back, I mean, we would have to get really creative. I mean, I could see us using our lunchroom, which is very big. I could see us using the gyms, you know, just different ideas maybe to figure out how we can socially distance students until the CDC, until our healthcare professionals tell us that it is okay for us to come back.
Even with all the guidelines in place, do you see students complying? What percentage of compliance do you expect to see?
Oh gosh, that's so
age?
hard. I think it really just depends on their age. I think high school students would be a lot better, even though, you know, they still don't fully understand and they want to be able to talk to their friends. I think for elementary school students and middle school students, it might be a little bit harder for them to really grasp, because they're you know, they're in their world at the moment. Sometimes they, you know, kids sometimes can be more egocentric in what's going on in their world, and it's hard for them to step outside of the bigger picture. You know, when they're in elementary and middle school, high school, they really start to get that awareness. So I think it would be easier for high school students. I think our elementary schools and our middle schools will have a lot harder time to enforce those things. It would be a constant battle.
Okay. Professor Akinyemi?
Yes.
Unlike frontline personnel such as Dr. Aderibigbe, who have an ethical duty to care for patients with the virus despite, you know, personal dangers involved, how do we make a moral argument that teachers have an obligation to be in the classroom when they're at elevated risk, such as those who are older, especially?
Yeah, that's a tough one because teachers get into this profession because they're passionate about it, right? Because they want to contribute to the lives of their students. So not being in the classroom is not the first option that teachers choose. But the circumstance is such that you have to put your profession and your life, and decide, which one am I willing to risk for what right here, right? Especially when we are getting conflicting information from our politicians, vis-a-vis the scientists, and you're not sure if decisions are being made based on politics or based on science. So you as a teacher, therefore, you're in a situation where you have to make a choice, and you may not even have that choice, right? Also, we have to remember that one size is not going to fit all. For example, at the University System of Georgia, and specifically at Kennesaw, where I work, we have three options right now. The first option that is being encouraged for everyone is face-to-face, right? And then you have the option of doing a hybrid. And then, of course, fully online. But in order to do fully online, you have to have some medical certification, some letter from your doctor that you fit into these categories that can be exempted. There is that list that we have at KSU. So you essentially have to make your case that you have some underlying condition that prevents you from teaching face to face. So yeah, and a lot of teachers, especially at the university level, are in that risk category, 50 and above, right? So you're in there. And if you're teaching online, there are some challenges. If you're teaching face-to-face, as Ms. Horn just mentioned, how do you ensure that you have proper distancing in the classroom, right? How do you ensure that you can make the students put their mask on, although it's being required? And once they leave your classroom and they go on with their everyday life, you don't know what they're doing with their friends. Are they in the bar enjoying themselves? Are they getting together? So it's very challenging. So you've got the ethical issue, but you also have the professional obligation. So what do you choose? How do you make a decision? It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and even for parents at that. So Dr. Fuller, parents are they're weighing two things, the risk of the educational risk versus the health risk and the mental health risk as well. What would you tell parents? What advice would you give them?
Well, several of the, I see children as well, adults, young adults, geriatrics. Several of the mothers, the patient's mother, they said, well, Dr. Fuller, what should I do? And there are several who have already made the decision prior to asking me. They wanted to hear my opinion. And it's based on, and I think communication is very, very important. Communicating the facts, communicating the plan, addressing apprehension, anxiety of the parents, as well as the children, especially older children. That's a concern, it's a big concern. The other thing which is important is that when they make the decision, and if there is someone who has a comorbid illness and they do get sick or ill, then there's a substantial amount of guilt that parent would endure. So you have to look at the dynamics, and each person, I hate to say this, but it's the truth, each person is different. If you, and I've read different plans, hallways one way and stairwells one way, and, glass surrounding and eating in you're at your desk. But again, the bottom line is, what if, we know the statistics, we know the facts, but what if that occurs? How is the mental health plan needs to be established. I've had the opportunity to train chaplains doing this and some other people who would address this, and it has to be established in the school systems when and if this occurs, and the communication needs to be very open and ask these questions. There needs to be question and answer sessions. There needs to be protocols established with respect to letting parents know. Communication, I believe, is one of the major pieces here for the parents, students, and the schools.
Very well. I think the situation is further confounded by the fact that there's no unified voice where this is concerned. And this all boils down to the fact that this is a political year. It's an election year. So you have so many contradictions. Who would have thought that the issue of masks is so controversial? Right here where I am in Georgia, there's a major battle with masks going on. Some cities have mandated, the mayors mandate masks. The governor has decided to ban the mask mandate. So you have that political battle going on. You have in other states where the citizens are saying it's satanic to put on masks. So there's so much going on, and there's no unified voice, and so people are confused. They don't really know the seriousness of the coronavirus or the disease itself. Dr. Aderibe, clarify for people the risk. Once again, and people are saying, we want our children to go to school because we have to go to work and we have no place to put them. So so they think it's more important to have their children in school because they need to go to work. That's some of the case that's been made by some of the Gwinnett County parents, for instance, who were protesting a couple of weeks ago. Weighing again the educational risk or the babysitting risk, if you will, against the health risk. Please clarify.
Yes, it's very difficult. To put it in perspective, I pulled out a CDC blog from the other day where they polled 20 doctors, epidemiologists, medical experts, and just says, okay, it's one thing to advise people, tell them what you think. What would you do? And I'll just read a little excerpt from there. It says, we got a wide range of responses, which were highly dependent on the location, the personal risk tolerance, degree of support at home, the measures taken at the individual school, and the age of the children. Very diverse factors coming into play. 6 of the experts felt confident about sending their kids back, 6 out of 20. 8 were in the wait and see mode. And the final 6 were leaning strongly towards remote learning and were not comfortable with the prospect of having kids in school, at least for the beginning of the year. Risk tolerance is a big deal. Even here in my hospital, I talked to some of the nurses. Some of them says, I understand the risk, but I'm just going to have to find another job if my kid stays at home. Another person who has a grandmother staying with her says, no, that risk is not worth taking. I'm going to do online, no matter what it takes me. So it's so individual. And when the American Academy of Pediatrics came out in May in support of kids going back to school, a lot has happened since then, even in the past 3 weeks. So it keeps on shifting, and we have to be sensitive to those numbers. So that's my take. It's not a yes or no response.
No answer. All right. So now and you can speak to this, Dr. Fuller, as well. So some people are saying, all right, so there is a cure. And there is a medicine you can take prophylactically. And that medication is hydroxychloroquine. What do you say about that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that. And, here in the United States, any kind of drug has to go through phases of study and safety profiles and things like that. Granted, when there's something going on as significant with major consequences as the COVID, that has to be really sped up. From all the reports I've seen, even though I'm a child physician, the safety profile and efficacy hasn't made the experts comfortable with saying that's the way to go. Having said that, I do know that when you're back is to the wall. Sometimes people will get out of the box and try different things. Like outside this country, I know it's being used. It's not being studied. And so I think people have to be careful about recommending that medication here. That's my take. I wouldn't just take it. Some people are even recommending prophylaxis, just take it. If you remember, from some of us who are from malaria endemic parts of the world, it's used as an anti-malaria medication. So it's been used already for years and years in other setups. Now, for the high-risk people, remember, it does have cardiac side effects. So when you are older, you have blood pressure issues and other things, or you are taking other medication. There could be some side drug-to-drug effects. So I would really talk to your physician before embarking on that.
Thank you. Ms. Horn, when children are in school, of course, they have the physical activity aspect as well. And maybe they're not getting that at home right now. So the disruption in school is not only affecting their learning, but could undermine their physical health and their physical security, their social emotional learning as well, and their food access. What advice would you give to parents to mitigate that impact?
Well, I think that's a really great question. I think the biggest thing, it would depend on, let's say if they're all online, their online learning schedule. And I'm just going to go off of Gwinnett County and what we're doing at Parkview, just to kind of give an example. So the way our classes are going to be set up for this semester, there's 10-minute break in between each class, because they have to get on and live stream their classes. And I would say really utilize that break time to get up, stretch, go outside, get fresh air. If they have an hour-long lunch break, go outside, do a little exercise if they can. Really something just to get them up and moving and away from their computer desk, wherever they're sitting. So that's going to be the biggest thing is, pushing your students to get up, take breaks, stretch, get that fresh air. That, I feel like I'm not a doctor by any means, but I think there's something to be said about getting outside and just getting some sun for a few minutes. Also, I would recommend to parents, to help their students create a routine. Don't let them go to school in their pajamas. Really get them up, tell them to get dressed in their school clothes. Because really what you want to do, kind of trick, when you're in this situation, is trick your brain into thinking you're in the school setting, wear school clothes, have that routine. And, when we were discussing earlier before everybody joined us, saying, cutting off a time when saying, okay, my student has sat in front of the computer long enough today, they need to cut it off, they need to be done. Because the biggest thing is that teachers are being very flexible and are being instructed to be very flexible during this situation. They know that students are sharing devices, that there might be internet issues, all sorts of things. And they also know, and us being adults as well, that sitting on the computer for long periods of time is draining, it's exhausting. And so I would, advise parents to say, after 6, 7 p.m., designate a time that they don't get on and do schoolwork anymore, because they're still kids. They still need to do fun things. They still need to enjoy their night. They don't need to be on the computer till 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning doing their schoolwork. And, I did see some of that when this started, in March. And I would be talking with my students, about their routines and all of that. They would say, Ms. Horn, I've, didn't finish my digital learning until 2 o'clock in the morning. They're up. And then, they created this vicious cycle for themselves that they couldn't break and were sleeping all day. And so I think the routine is the biggest thing, is help them do that, but also sit down with them and help them create a calendar. This is huge. They have, for example, at Parkview, our students have 6 academic classes. And so and they're going to be getting work from each of those classes. So if parents can sit down and review a syllabus with the students for each of their classes, put it on a calendar, something tangible that they can see. I think that's going to be imperative because, it goes back to helping them cut off when they do their schoolwork. So, for example, they have maybe a test next week. Well, they have a project due this week. So if the kids can see that, then they can start to learn to prioritize what's important for this week and what I can, get a little bit of time to do the next. So those are the big things I think parents should know as far as how to help them be successful, and just checking in with them mentally. How are you doing? Asking them those questions, communicating, and if they aren't feeling like they're doing okay, assessing are they talking to their friends? Are they getting social interaction? Are they out doing things? Are they out, they get off their digital learning for the day, are they doing things outside, getting that fresh air? And are they talking to their school counselors? That's a big thing too, is they need to have somebody that they can talk to about what's going on in the world, because I know that they're having a hard time really understanding it because it is such all the politics that is involved with this. And as children, they haven't really seen that side of the world yet, and now it's like bam, hitting them in the face. And I'm sure they're hearing parents talk about it, and their friends talk about it, but they don't really understand what all that means yet. So having that open communication.
So speaking of helping them be successful,
Mm-hmm.
technology access.
Yeah.
What are the school systems doing? In this case, Gwinnett County, which you're a part of, to ensure that students have access to technology, because socioeconomically, every household is not the same. What is the school system doing to ensure that each child has access to the technology that they need for digital learning?
And I would say Gwinnett County has been wonderful. I feel blessed to be a part of a school system where they have these resources. For Gwinnett, they have purchased a significant amount of Chromebooks for students, and they have distributed them out to the different schools. Schools already had extra Chromebooks now available, but now that we are all online, they went ahead and bought all of these computers, distributed them out, and schools are able to give those out to kids in need. And then also with internet access, that's a big one too. They have purchased a lot of hotspots that we can allocate to students. And so we've already started that process. I know at Parkview, where we have parents and students calling, asking about the device and internet connection. How can they get that? But we're also, posting that and letting them know, hey, if you need help, if you need internet access, if you need a device, then contact your local school and we'll make sure those resources are provided. I know not every school system has that capability.
I'm not sure that this information has been really publicized. So how do people find out?
So for Parkview, that is going to be on our website. And so students and parents will be able to click a link and, and it takes them to the person at our school that handles giving out devices and hotspots.
So essentially reach out to your school.
Yeah. If you're a parent in Gwinnett County, you'll want to reach out to your local school and ask them about that. And so we want people to know that that's available.
Okay. So other counties also, I suppose it would be good to reach out to your school system as well. Professor Aki, I mean, what's been done at the university level for students in terms of resources?
Yeah, as Ms. Horn was just talking, I was thinking about our students. When we had to go online in March, I had a student in my class who couldn't really participate online because she didn't have internet access at home. And her main access was her telephone. And she normally will come on campus and use the library to do her work on the internet, on the computer. Well, when the university was shut down, that option disappeared. She couldn't complete the semester. I had to give her an incomplete, right? So that's a real challenge for students. Now, in terms of giving students computers or iPads, I'm not really aware of what the university is doing about that. Also, the issue of students who may not have internet access at home. That's a serious problem. And I don't know what the university is doing about that. Now, I want to just follow up a little bit with what Ms. Horn is saying here. The schools represented here are in the Metro Atlanta area. I'm worried about schools in the rural areas and schools in those school districts where they don't have the resources to give laptops or iPads to their students, right? We all know how schools are funded through property tax. And those schools in the less well-endowed areas may not have the resources to do online. So just as we're talking about, university students not having those access or, having challenges getting those type of resources, what do we do? How are the schools that are not in wealthy school districts or in Metro Atlanta area, how are they coping? Do they have reliable internet access? Do the kids have computers? Is there any equity in terms of equal access to these resources across the state? I don't know, but I think those are things that we really should look into. Now, at the university level, professors at Kennesaw, we've been issued iPads with university installed softwares that can, help with online teaching, right? But in terms of what is being done for the students, I can't speak to that because I don't know.
Dr. Fuller, you're also faculty. What's in Michigan, what's been done?
Well, looking at the undergrad, the children, I would say, of course, schools, but there are the larger churches that I've seen. They have purchased several Chromebooks and have been giving them out as, first come, first served basis. And even some of the larger churches in the countries, they have been able to do that as well. And the other interesting thing is I've seen some of the cable companies to give people who don't have internet access to be able to allow the children to have access. As far as undergraduate and graduate, I don't know. And the reason why is the majority of the people who I have contact with, they do have internet access.
All right. Now, Dr. Fuller, I'm still staying on you. What practical tips can you give parents relative to mental health with all that's going on and all the confusion, the stress, the financial stress, the health stress, balancing the needs of the children, the job loss, and all the things they have to deal with? What practical tips can you give them relative to trying to maintain their mental health as well as trying to keep it together for everyone?
It's interesting because I remember when I was an intern and I first had my emergency room training, and the first thing they told us in the ER is, when we're getting ready to do a code, they said, first check your own self. Make sure that your blood pressure is low. Make sure that you're not out of control. And so it's very important, I believe, that the parents begin to look in to their own mental health. A lot of times we see reflections of the symptoms mimicked, especially in younger children. So it's so important to be connected to a group, connected to a church organization, a nonprofit organization, It's so important to stay connected. And then, as a matter of fact, as Ms. Horn was saying, this is not only for the children, but for the parents. Structure in your daily activity. They should structure that. And the reason why this is, I believe, a growing process that everyone can benefit from this. So they're going to learn, the parents are going to learn as individuals a lot about themselves if they allow this to evolve. And what I mean by is structuring their day. And by doing that, they can actually structure their children's day. And collectively, the adults are increasing their life skills and the children are learning life skills. So that's really important, staying connected. And it's important to have a cutoff time. And that goes back to structure, to be able to go outside, to have play time, to have relaxation time. Prior to the pandemic, the majority of my patients I saw online. I was very, very fortunate, but I go into 2 different clinics as well, outpatient clinics. And I learned how to structure my day. 5 a.m. get up, 7 a.m. start patients. I mean, it's like clockwork, and finish by 4:30. But the reason why is because we have to maintain a balance. You can get overwhelmed with anxiety, depression, loneliness. And so that balance by being connected and staying structured, I believe, is very important.
Thank you very much. Dr. Aderibibe, where can people go to find reliable information about COVID-19? What's a reliable source of facts, not fiction? Is Dr. Aderibibe still with us? Did we lose him?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Sorry about that.
A reliable source that people can go and count on getting the real information.
I would recommend the CDC website.
Okay.
And I think you can actually log onto the CDC website and put in your email address or contact information where they could just send to you, relevant updates regarding COVID-19. The American Academy of Pediatrics is good as well, but I believe they feed off what the CDC sends out. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. And for those of you who may have missed that, if you would like that information, if you missed it, I'm sure PRI, you can contact PRI. We'll be glad to get that information to you.
Okay.
All right, so now we'll take some questions from our participants. Oh, right. Let's see, we start with the first question. Somebody simply indicated that they live in Massachusetts and they're going to a hybrid program of some in classes and the rest online and then switching with one another. Okay, the details are still being fine-tuned. Yes, there's a lot of things are certainly evolving. All right, so somebody has a question that said, how will competitive sports be addressed in the fall? Some young men are depending on football or wrestling in order to finance college hopes. How will online schooling impact their ability to attend college and their ability? Why not go to a 3-2, 3 days in school and 2 online? And why is it just either or? A 3-2 will allow parents more predictability with getting back to the parents' work. And anyone could feel free to respond to that question. They're asking why can't they do 3 days in school and 2 online? Why isn't that?
I can sort of answer that question. I think it really just depends on that school system and what their decision is. And I have a little bit of perspective from this because I actually coach softball at Parkview. And so right now our softball players are back, but we have very strict guidelines. I mean, they're wearing masks at practice. And the only time they don't have to wear them is when they're actually in their positions in the field and actively practicing that way. But if there's a time where we're getting water breaks or they're around each other, they have to have them on. Football was pushed back until September. So, and what we were seeing was some of our football players were coming down with COVID. because football's more of a contact sport. I mean, you know, there's bodily fluids get exchanged in football, whether it's spit, blood, you know, it's just that's what happens. And so I think it depends on the sport individually as well. Like, are they able to socially distance? Football, not so much, but I hear what the parent is saying about they're depending on these things for college. And so where it comes down to the local school district decision, you know, I've heard some school districts, you know, if they're doing the hybrid schedule, and if the students were choosing to do online, they couldn't play sports. I know in Gwinnett, we had originally looked at the hybrid option before going to online. And even the students who said they were going to go online, we were still going to allow them to play sports. So, and I don't know about the 3 to 2 days a week schedule. I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to that. But as far as college goes, you know, sending in those videos of your student skills, that's important too, you know. And there's a big world to the recruitment process where, you know, your student athlete can send in their skills videos and reach out to those college coaches to get on their radar. And I think especially in this time, that's going to be super important, because college coaches are going to be relying heavily if they have sports that aren't playing, they're going to have to be looking at those skills videos.
Yeah.
So record your students, you know, if they're not able to play, record your students doing what, you know, their sport, or if you have old highlight tapes, anything that you can send in to them is going to be.
Dr. Adebiribe, did you want to say something? I thought I heard you.
Oh, no, I was just nodding and agreeing to everything she just said.
Okay. All right. Okay, so actually the next question is for you. It's the person, this from Dr. Adebayo, says it's about science and COVID-19 information. What is fact and what is falsehood? In recent months, hard science is beginning to sound like social science, where people are lined up behind one viewpoint, or the other. Should we be concerned that the medical and epidemiological sciences are politicized this way?
Yes, very much so. It shouldn't be, but that's what it appears. But regarding the topic we're talking about, you know, hopefully the school administrators and people in position to influence decision are looking at the science aspect of it to make those decisions about school opening, and not so much the political angle. But yeah, when you tune on to the news, you kind of get a sense that, you know, some issues are being politicized. Like you said, when you came on, election year, people having different agenda, things like that. But again, I just stick to the facts, and I hope that the school systems will be relying on their well-trusted science people to make those decisions.
All right. So I have another question from a parent. It says some parents just cannot school online because of their work schedules. So why not let them go back to school and allow the super anxious parents to school online, especially the parents that have the resources? So actually, if the person who has this question would unmute, because I'd like you to flesh this out a little bit, if you don't mind. Marilyn, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Go ahead.
All right. If you want to speak to this, how do you propose this work?
What was the question? I had a few questions. What was the question that you just read?
Okay. With regards to allowing those, all right, it was some parents cannot school online because of their work schedules. Why not let them go back to school and allow the super anxious parents to school online, especially the parents that have the resources?
Yeah, just let them. I mean, there seems to be a big concern from some parents about their inability to work. You know, and I'm listening to a lot of people say a lot of different things about work and school and school as a babysitter, which I never considered school to be. But why not just open the school, let those who are going to go to school. And then if there are other parents, because obviously there's going to be probably 10%, 12% of the parents that just aren't going to be comfortable with that option at all, just let them go online. Now, what may happen is you may end up, because it's my understanding Gwinnett had an online option anyway for homeschooling. So you may lose 10 or 12% of the student body because of COVID. You might lose another 10 or 12% of the student body who just don't want to have this sort of uncertainty. So I don't necessarily think that you're going to be looking at 100% of the students coming back anyway. So maybe, if it's only 80% of the students coming back, open up the school, let the students who want to physically go to school, and then everybody else who is, I call it super anxious, but maybe normally anxious, just let them go online. Why not that option?
I believe the survey that was done of parents, it was 43% were the ones who wanted to have the option of in-person. So it was actually a lower number. But I'd like to have a panel respond to the question.
Hi, Marilyn. So I don't want to speak specifically to what Gwinnett County's decision and why they did that, because I can't, and I'm not sure. I will say that I can say that the number of parents who were choosing to do online was much higher. We at Parkview, for example, we had about a 60-40 split with parents choosing to do online versus sending their students to return. Now I know it was harder, I think, for high schools logistically to figure out how they wanted to structure their teachers to, where there was a lot of questions in the air, such as, do we designate teachers to do both? Like, are they going to be allowing the students to live stream in while they're teaching the students in class? Are they going to do it separately? We're going to have separate periods of the day where students or the teachers are just doing their online classes, and then they're just designated to their students who are in person, or are we going to split the teachers up and say these teachers are doing online and then these teachers are doing in-person teaching? There was a lot of logistical questions, and I think as we were trying to make this online and in-person option happen, I think it was difficult for like high schools, like I said, in Gwinnett, for example. We have just such a large populace of students, and so to make that happen logistically, they're in our curriculum offices, for example. We have one AP and a clerk, and they do 3,200 student schedules, and so trying to do that and make that happen for 60% of the students that were going to online and 40% of the students in person. I just think they weren't going to be able to do that by when schools needed to reopen. For example, we pushed back the date to August 12th. And so they just simply couldn't get it done in that amount of time. And that's just because we have so many students. And what's happening is you're restructuring an entire technology system. We use a platform called Synergy, and there's a lot of data that goes into that. So restructuring that platform to redo all of these schedules to accommodate it was just proving to be difficult. And then of course, just health guidelines were also a factor. So I really think the answer to that question is just, it's difficult overall to do the hybrid unless you have a high school, say like in Gwinnett, we have the Gwinnett Online Campus School, who they are built for that. But the local schools who aren't, having to have them restructure was very difficult. But I hear what you're saying about parents. Parents have to work, and they can't always they can't be there with their children, and if they have small children, and it's very difficult. So I know that has been super tough on parents, and I think it goes back to what some of the panelists were saying earlier. It's just very individual for everybody. And, you know, is this parent able to work from home? And if they're not, are they able to get care for their children? Can they drop them off at, say, a neighbor's house and, you know, let their student do work, you know, with the neighbor, you know, and that way maybe they're minimizing who talks to their students, so they know if there is a COVID, you know, outbreak, that where it's coming from. So it's a tough question. It's really hard to say. The biggest answer I can say is logistics were just not there in a lot of the schools.
It's a major challenge on many levels because
Can
yes,
I follow up?
yeah, 1 second, I will let you follow up. Having, you know, to work and even having to drop them off, there's a financial implication as well. So it's really tough all around and has a lot of multiple challenges on many levels for a lot of families. So these are really tough times on different levels. I'll let you follow up. I know you also have another question as well.
Yeah, my question is, do you get the sense that school administrators are just holding their breath, waiting for a vaccine to come? That I work in the court system, and that's my sense. Everybody's just holding their breath, waiting for a vaccine to come. So if a vaccine comes in August, great. But if a vaccine doesn't come till August of 2022, we're all sort of in this hold pattern. That's for any of the panelists. Does anybody get the sense that everybody's just in a hold pattern, waiting for this vaccine?
Can I jump in there?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the situation for the whole country, really, not just, you know, for the schools. You know, I think until we have a vaccine or some type of treatment that's reliable, I think we're going to be in this holding pattern.
It goes beyond the school system.
I think that's just true for everybody.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And I'll just make a quick point. I know we're running out of time, but you had brought it up about the idea of people trying to hold parties to get infected, and maybe that spreads the immunity. Big difference between natural infection and you getting a vaccine. Natural infection could overwhelm your body's immune system, whereas getting a vaccine is a well-tested system to wake your immune cells up to be able to tackle an infection. Thank you.
All right. So,
Can I just follow up with Dr. Aderibigbe? I don't want to let this go without coming back to it. I think there's a sense from the last question that if we just let those who want to go to school go, and those who don't want to stay home, this is a public health issue. It's not about one individual, right? So if we let those who wants to go, and they get infected, they come home, right? And they infect their family, and they go into the community and infect others. So the risk is not just for the individual, it's also for the community. So it shouldn't be up to, okay, I want my kids to go to school, they should go, when there is a public health emergency.
I agree 100% with that. And that's what some of the panelists had talked about, that the COVID-19 should not be an opportunity for political debate. This is real, it's happening, and we shouldn't wait till it knocks on our door before we wake up. You'll be surprised. I work in the health industry, and even some health nurses, people who should know better, still some of them are of the opinion that, well, it's really not a big deal if I don't have a comorbid situation. The truth is that a lot of people who are supposedly healthy have comorbid situations without realizing it.
yes.
There are a lot of young men, especially minorities, African American, who are hypertensive without knowing it. There are a lot of people who are pre-diabetic without knowing it. So when they're looking at the mortality, saying, geez, why is this happening? Either a lack of insurance or just taking things too casual. I agree with you, it's a bigger problem, it's a societal problem, and we shouldn't let individual perception make things worse for the greater population.
And certainly we should not be swayed by political affiliations.
And I'd like to say one thing, if I may. It's real interesting. We're holding our breath as a society, as a global society, waiting for the vaccine. But there are going to be several who don't take it because of the levels of untrust that's happened in the future. So then it becomes an issue: is the vaccine mandatory? And I look at like the eradication of polio, et cetera. Will this be mandatory just because we have a vaccine? I'm just going to say something like 3 months, 6 months. But when will people actually start to take it, or a community start to take it? Different ethnicities start to take it as a result of history. Those dynamics that have to be explored.
Particularly in this very polarized environment that we're in currently. A lot of factors come into play. All right, another question. In addition to its social services, and in addition to the dependence of parents on the schools to care for their students a few hours of the day, education is a big industry. Can we look at the various needs around reopening of schools? How do we balance these various roles of education and schools in this pandemic? Who wants to speak to that? I know we relatively addressed that in the previous questions. Does anyone want to give a different take on that?
There are various needs when reopening the schools, and it's really hard. Like our panelists were explaining, it has to be a collective decision, and unfortunately there are a lot of individual factors, like say in the school system, if parents have students who are in special education and they have a hard time with online learning, if they have students who have vision issues and they're having to incorporate now this assistive technology that sometimes schools have but parents don't have, and having to figure out how to get those resources. So there's a lot of individual needs, which makes this a very difficult situation to make an overall decision for, I think, the greater good. I think we could figure out a way to balance it. I think we just need more time, because it's only been 5-6 months here, and schools have worked so hard to balance and restructure already, and we're continuously looking at how are we going to look at all of our students' individual needs, or smaller group needs, such as our students who are in special education, or our students who are English language learners from other countries. How do we help them? And so I think the answer is that we have to get really creative, and I know a lot of schools are, and I know it's not really being, I guess, reported in the news, and so people don't really see that, but schools are. I mean, if you get a bunch of teachers and people in education together, you got the most creative bunch of people you could ever meet. Teachers are very creative. When we all put our ideas together, great things happen, but sometimes great things take time to figure out. So we make sure that we are following the health guidelines, we are addressing those needs. And when it comes to social services, that's hard too, because as a counselor, I not having students in person, where a lot of the times when I see them in person, if there's an abuse situation going on, a neglect situation, anything of that nature, when I see them in person, a lot of times it's easier to determine that. And now that they're online, I don't get to see that as much. So it's harder to get those kids services when they're not coming to school. And so and those things keep you up at night. You sit and think about, oh my goodness, like all my students, that help and I don't know, or not reaching out, and now we're having to get creative about, okay, how do we make sure that those students who need help know that they have somewhere to go?
So another posting says, I feel it's just not possible for everybody's needs to be met. Hence, having looked at all the dynamics, I feel the safest option for everyone is the virtual learning. It requires a lot of sacrifices, yes. It's stressful, yes, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is it's safer for everyone involved because there's no guarantee that students will be disciplined enough to comply with all guidelines while in class, thereby jeopardizing the health of others. On the part of parents, I'd like them to know that the sacrifice is worth it. These children are the future, and this pandemic shall surely pass, with victory being ours in Jesus' mighty name. So that was a comment. All right, so the next comment, there's a resource that as a nation we are not tapping into, the homeschool experience. I think many parents of preschool age through high school students can borrow ideas from homeschoolers. What are your thoughts? Particularly our teachers, the professor and counselor.
I agree. There's a lot of homeschool communities, and I think that would just be a parent decision. You know, if parents say in the school community can group students together in small groups, socially distance them, make sure they're wearing their masks, but have them stay in one place where they are doing the homeschooling together, you know, and it be the same students. So you're containing, you know, if say something does happen, you know where it's coming from. But there's a lot to be learned from homeschool parents, and there are a lot of support groups for homeschool parents out there where they all talk to each other. They're giving each other tips and advice. So I think as a parent, it would be great to tap into those resources. You can find them on Facebook forums. You know, you do a quick Google search, you can find different websites that have homeschool resources. So I think that's a great point of view and a great comment to add to the discussion.
Professor Aki, I mean, this question is for you. How
Mm-hmm.
are you planning to help the international students that are in limbo right now, vis-a-vis the additional stress of being sent back to their countries if classes are no longer in person?
Yeah, I think we answered that question on the text. In that policy that was being promoted, or I think it was an executive order, has been rescinded already because of the lawsuits that some universities launched against the Trump administration and criticism of that policy. So that policy is no longer, you know, it's no longer there. It's gone. I think related to that, probably some students who were already out of the country and can't come back in because planes are not flying or international travel is prohibited in those countries. I think that could be a problem for international students. Some international students who are staying in the dorms, when dorms are closed, there's a problem of where do they go? Where do they stay, right? So they have to find accommodations for themselves. But I don't think the fear is there now that they will be sent home if all their classes are online. I think that policy has been gotten rid of. Can I make a comment on what Ms. Horn was talking about homeschooling? I've had some students in the past who were homeschooled and they did really great. I think homeschooling is fine. But there is an assumption that every parent can do homeschooling. Not every parent has the skills to do homeschooling. Some parents have to work. They can't afford to stay home and homeschool. You know, whether it's a single parent or two-income family, it's just not an option for a lot of parents to homeschool. So that's, you know, something we need to keep in mind. But those who can do it, who can afford it, and who have the skills, I think it's a good option to consider.
I have one last question for you, Ms. Horn. In a conversation with someone, I'm not sure where this was reported, that last semester, I know, of course, it was not a pre-planned situation. It was said that in one of the school systems, I'm not sure which one, that they found out that up to perhaps something like 20% of the students did not actually log into the digital experience, and nothing was done. It was after the fact. What is Gwinnett County doing, for instance, since you are a part of Gwinnett County, to ensure that there's timely intervention in situations where the students are not actually logging in to do the work, to ensure the parents are aware and there's timely intervention?
Well, yeah, and you're correct in that there was a lot of students who weren't logging in, and we had to really stay on top of them. I mean, we were day in and day out calling families, talking to the students, making sure that they're aware about their classes. We had a whole spreadsheet of kiddos, and like I said, thankfully we have those resources. I don't know that other counties do, but we have it where if they were logging on to their eClass page, it would tell you, or it would show you whether they were not logging in or they were every day. And so we created a spreadsheet based on that. I mean, the kiddos who weren't logging in for like 3 to 5 consecutive days, we were calling them and continuing to call them. And that's all we could do at the moment. At that time, we weren't able to, as counselors, speak with our students virtually because we were, confidentiality concerns were there, from them being at home and us being at home, but we could call them. And so that's what we did. And really working with our teachers, they were helpful as well, saying this student hasn't logged in. And so it was always the question of, do you have a device? Do you have internet? And we were finding a lot of the students that weren't logging in did not have those resources. We were finding that a lot of the students that weren't logging in were students who were ELL students, being English language learners, and they didn't know about those resources. So preventatively, I think communication is going to be the big, we're already advertising on our website about, you need devices, if you need resources, this is how to get them. My co-counselor and I, for 9th graders, because they're 9th grade babies, need a lot of help, we are going to be doing a virtual parent meeting on August 10th, and we're going to be going over all the things that parents need to know via Zoom meeting. So, really just trying to communicate beforehand with parents everything that they need, updating our websites frequently, allowing them, saying, email us, call us, because we'll be in our offices, and make sure that, you feel like you can reach out to us, and we want to make sure that we're doing our job to make them feel that way, just being very open. So I think communication is huge with helping parents, and it's from everybody across the board. It's from our administrators, our teachers, peer school counselors nationwide. We need to make sure that we're open for parents and supporting them and supporting, first and foremost, our students.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Ms. Adeshe, if I may chip in
Yes.
and use my host privilege.
Certainly.
Yes. So I was watching, I think, a news item last week, and a particular parent was talking about what they were doing in their neighborhood, and that is to kind of create a support system for one another. So what they did was, well, they're doing it, they're trying to find out, in a subdivision or 2 subdivisions next to each other, they're trying to find out each other's schedules, the students' schedules and all that, so that if they are online, the students have to school online, they are kind of teaming up to, okay, they are in somebody's house for 2 days, or they're in another person's house for 3 days, so that one parent is not overwhelmed 5 days a week, especially maybe you don't even have the option yourself as a parent to work from home 5 days a week. So you can choose the days that you know that you can be home, and those 2 days or 3 days are the days that you have the children, you watch over them, you supervise them. And then the next couple of days, you are able to go out and walk, or to at least catch, your breath and maintain your sanity while they're with somebody else. So they are trying to ensure a situation where no one parent has to supervise more than 2 days a week. So one, that helps you as a parent to not be overwhelmed. 2, if you also have, like, some parents have their, what I call, underemployed right now, they don't have work for 5 days a week, maybe they're only going to work for 2 or 3 days a week. So they have those 3 days where they can really go out to work, and they're still they're still able to have the confidence that their child is under somebody's supervision. So what I'm saying effectively is that this is the time for us as parents to begin to create that support for ourselves. Look out for who is in your subdivision that you can partner with, that you of course, you have to be careful so that you don't put your children in a situation where it's not safe. So you have to know who you're partnering with. You have to know who you are, having those kind of conversations with, and basically, create help for yourself. The government can't do everything for us. Our school specialists can't do everything for us. We also have to find out what can we do, how can we support each other, so that's what I just wanted to bring.
Creative solutions. Creative solutions.
Yes, and the children also get some interaction, with their friends or their neighbors,
Very good. So at this time, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to leave us with something, right? What is it you'd like to leave us with regarding reopening of schools? What would you like us to walk away with? Your closing thoughts. I'm going to begin with Professor Akinyemi.
Yeah, thank you for organizing this and for all the participants. This has been very informative for me also. I think for me, this too shall pass. We're all in the same boat. We've heard this over and over again. It sounds like a cliche, but it's the truth. But we also have to do our own job to get good information. Don't rely on politicians. This is an election year, so everything is being politicized. And this is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is a public health issue, and we're all in it together. So get as much information as you can. Visit your school's website, see what they have on there. I don't have kids in public school anymore, but I went on the Cobb County school system website in preparation for this, and they have quite a lot of information on there. For parents, for students and teachers. So be informed and make the best decision for you and your family. But again, this too shall pass. Just stay healthy and be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Akinyemi. Ms. Horn, your closing thoughts?
Just from the school perspective, I would say really tap into that open communication with, the faculty at the school, your students' teachers, your students' counselor, really have that open line there, because they're going to be the people that can help you the most, especially when it comes to your student success, how they can help you, and it depends on every single school. I know we've got some people tuning in from different places, but they can give you more specialized advice maybe for your student based on that school system and the local school. So communication is going to be imperative during this time. Don't hesitate to reach out, to the people that are piloting your child's success.
Thank you, Ms. Horn. Dr. Aderibigbe, your closing thoughts, please. Would you please unmute? You are muted.
Unmute, please.
You are muted, Dr. Aderibigbe.
Oh, I'm sorry again.
It happens to the best of us.
So, I'm so sorry about that. No, I said I'll echo Prof's sentiments. I'm really worried about the anxiety and the mental ramifications of COVID itself. I've talked to a lot of my colleagues who take care of grown people. I take care of kids. And there's COVID, and then there's the anxiety that is related to COVID. A lot of people have insomnia. A lot of people, blood pressure is through the roof. And the best thing is do the right thing. Social distancing, wear your mask, do everything that is in your control to limit that issue, and don't go crazy because it's real. Loneliness, depression, all those other things are COVID related, even though they are not like the full-blown COVID itself. Be informed.
All right, so I'm gonna break the rule right now, even though I said closing remarks. So as long as you wear a mask, you can go anywhere and do anything?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you
Absolutely
for clarifying that. And now, Dr. Fuller, your closing thoughts.
I just want to tell people, and I want to piggyback on everything that was said, stay connected. Stay connected to schools. It's important to communicate with the counselors. It's important to communicate with the teachers. Stay connected with the primary care physicians and the pediatricians. Stay connected with the CDC, the guidelines. Stay connected with social groups. Stay connected with the groups within your community. And more than anything else, stay connected with yourself, being aware of what's going on with yourself, meaning so that if you find yourself being anxious or depressed, you can go off and give yourself some time to balance things out. And as the doc said, you know, because this is real. And so we want to look at ways that we can stay connected so that we can better function.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. And we do thank each and every one of you for joining us today and being a part of this dialogue. We do have some resources that have been made mention of, and I'm sure there are other resources that we'll be able to gather from our panelists today. We will compile those resources, and for those of you who are interested in getting a hold of those resources, we'll be glad to share them with you. And so if you're interested, we will put the PRI contact information in the chat. If someone would please go ahead and type the PRI email in the chat for me, and reach out to us, and we'll send the resources to you. Again, thank you very much. We hope that you've found some useful information today. And as we get further information, we'll make sure we keep you updated. Thank you so very much, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Glad to have you here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. Thank you, Professor Akinyemi, Professor Derek and Ms. Vaughn. Thank you so much. Nice having you here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Mhm.
Mm.